Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, where we're taking a little trek through time, through the history of the universe, and also learning a lot about why we really shouldn't stay here in this material world. This allegorical story that Narada Muni's been telling King Prachivamardhat is pretty heavy. It's like the naked truth. The fancy curtain has been drawn, and we see material nature for what it is, so that we can get some inspiration for getting serious. And at the end of today's reading, I'm going to give you a little treat. I'm going to fast forward and take you into Goloka. Yes, I'll let it go at that, and it'll be a surprise. Welcome to all of you out there in cyberspace, to the live studios here in Radha Lane, in ISKCON Houston, Texas. There's something more than just Texans in Texas. There's Sri Radha Nilamadava and all their wonderful devotees. Okay, Sanatana Goswami, I'm going to read to you, after the reading of the Bhagavatam, something from the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, which was authored by Sanatana Goswami, and his commentary. I'll tell you later. We'll get the reading done first. Hare Krishna Nitya. Okay. Sanatana Goswami, he loved the Bhagavatam, and he's trying to teach us how to love the Bhagavatam too. And so he wrote this Srimad-Bhagavatam Mahima Stotram to try to help us get a taste from the Sri Krishna Leela Stava. Sanatana Goswami has this to say about the Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarvalokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths. You are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwandotitaditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madgudo Man Mahadana Mandista Madbhagya Madananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadutadayin atini chochatakara hanamun chagadachin mam premna ret kantayospuda. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, here we are. Canto 4, Chapter 28, starting with text 35. Puranjana has become a woman in his next life because he was too much attached to his queen. And now he got married to a great king who was a great devotee, because he was also pious. So even if you do wrong things, if you get pious, you might get a birth that's not so good, but you'll also get good things on top of it. So be pious. That's the message. Okay. In the province of Kulachala, there were rivers named Chandravasa, Tamrapani, and Vatudaka. King Malayadvaj used to go to those pious rivers regularly and take his bath there. Thus he purified himself externally and internally. He took his bath and he ate bulbs, seeds, leaves, flowers, roots, fruits, and grasses, and drank water. In this way he underwent severe austerities. Eventually he became very skinny. Purport: we can definitely see that to advance in Krishna consciousness, one must control his bodily weight. If one becomes too fat, it is to be assumed that he is not advancing spiritually. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur severely criticized his fat disciples. It's right there in the purport, Prabhupada. He's so personal, you know? The idea is that one who intends to advance in Krishna consciousness must not eat very much. Devotees used to go to forests, high hills, or mountains on pilgrimages, but such severe austerities are not possible in these days. One should instead eat only prasad. And that's a relief. One should instead eat only prasad and no more than required. According to the Vaishnava calendar, there are many fasts, such as Ekadashi, and the appearance and disappearance days of God and His devotees. All of these are meant to decrease the fat within the body, so that one will not sleep more than desired, and will not become inactive and lazy. Overindulgence in food will cause a man to sleep more than required. This human form of life is meant for austerity, and austerity means controlling sex, food intake, etc. In this way, time can be saved for spiritual activity, and one can purify himself both externally and internally. Thus, both body and mind can be cleansed. Text 37. Through austerity, King Malayadvaj, in body and mind, gradually became equal to the dualities of cold and heat, happiness and distress, wind and rain, hunger and thirst, the pleasant and the unpleasant. In this way he conquered all relativities. Purport: liberation means becoming free from the relativities of the world. Unless one is self-realized, he has to undergo the dual struggle of the relative world. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna advises Arjuna to conquer all relativities through tolerance. Lord Krishna points out that it is the relativities, like winter and summer, that give us trouble in the material world. In the winter we do not like taking a bath, but in the summer we wish to take a bath twice, thrice, or more a day. Thus Krishna advises us not to be disturbed by such relativities and dualities when they come and go. The common man has to undergo much austerity to become equipoised before dualities. One who becomes agitated by the relativities of life has accepted a relative position and must therefore undergo the austerities prescribed in the Shastras to transcend the material body and put an end to material existence. King Malayadvaj underwent severe austerities by leaving his home, going to Kulachala, taking his bath in the sacred rivers, and eating only vegetables like stems, roots, seeds, flowers, and leaves, avoiding any cooked food or grains. These are very, very austere practices. In this age it is very difficult to leave home and go to the forest or the Himalayas to adopt the processes of austerity. Indeed, it is almost impossible. If one is even advised to give up meat eating, drinking, gambling, and illicit sex, one will fail to do so. What then would a person do if he went to the Himalayas or Kulachala? Such acts of renunciation are not possible in this age. Therefore, Lord Krishna has advised us to accept the Bhakti Yoga process. Bhakti Yoga will automatically liberate a person from the dualities of life. In Bhakti Yoga, Krishna is the center, and Krishna is always transcendental. Thus, in order to transcend dualities, one must always engage in the service of the Lord, as confirmed by Bhagavad Gita 14:26. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityayitan brahmabhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. If one is factually engaged in the service of the Lord, Bhakti Yoga, he will automatically control his senses, his tongue, and so many other things. Once engaged in the Bhakti Yoga process with all sincerity, one will have no chance of falling down. Even if one falls down, there is no loss. One's devotional activities may be stunned or choked for the time being. That's a time being. Just, okay, it's choked. But it only lasts for a few seconds. One's devotional activities may be stunned or choked for some time, for the time being. But as soon as there is another chance, the practitioner begins from the point where he left off. Text 38. By worshipping, executing austerities, and following the regulated principles, King Malayadvaj conquered his senses, his life, and his consciousness. Thus he fixed everything on the central point of the Supreme Brahman, Krishna. Purport. Whenever the word Brahman appears, the impersonalists take this to mean the impersonal effulgence, the Brahma Jyoti. Actually, however, Parabrahman, the Supreme Brahman, is Krishna, Vasudeva. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 7:19, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. Vasudeva extends everywhere as the impersonal Brahman. One cannot fix one's mind upon an impersonal something. Bhagavad Gita 12:5 therefore says, Klesho dikataraste sham avyakta sakta chetasam. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. Consequently, when it is said herein that King Malayadvaj fixed his mind on Brahman, Brahman means the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. 39. In this way he stayed immovable in one place for 100 years by the calculations of the demigods. After this time, he developed pure devotional attraction for Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and remained fixed in that position. Purport. Bahunam janmanam ante Jnanavam mam prapadyate Vasudevak sarvamiti samahatma sadurlabhaha. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. Bhagavad Gita 7:19. Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is everything, and one who knows this is the greatest of all transcendentalists. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that one realizes this after many, many births. This is also confirmed in this verse with the words Divyam Varsha Shatam, 100 years, according to the calculations of the demigods, is equal to 6 months. According to the calculations of the demigods, 1 day, 12 hours, is equal to 6 months on earth. 100 years of the demigods would equal 36,000 earth years. Thus King Malayadvaj executed austerities and penances for 36,000 years. After this time, he became fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. To live on earth for so many years, one has to take birth many times. This confirms the conclusion of Krishna. To come to the conclusion of Krishna consciousness and remain fixed in the realization that Krishna is everything, as well as render service unto Krishna, are characteristics of the perfectional stage. As said in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 22:62, Krishna Bhakti Kaila Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. When one comes to the conclusion that Krishna is everything, by worshipping or by rendering devotional service unto Krishna, one actually becomes perfect in all respects. Not only must one come to the conclusion that Krishna is everything, but he must remain fixed in this realization. This is the highest perfection of life, and it is this perfection that King Malayadvaj attained at the end. Text 40. King Malayadvaj attained perfect knowledge by being able to distinguish the supersoul from the individual soul. The individual soul is localized, whereas the supersoul is all-pervasive. He became perfect in knowledge that the material body is not the soul, but that the soul is the witness of the material body. Purport. The conditioned soul is often frustrated in trying to understand the distinctions between the material body, the supersoul, and the individual soul. There are two types of Mayavadi philosophers, the followers of Buddhist philosophy and the followers of the Shankar philosophy. The followers of Buddha do not recognize that there is anything beyond the body. The followers of Shankar conclude that there is no separate existence of the Paramatma, the Supersoul. The Shankarites believe that the individual soul is identical with the Paramatma in the ultimate analysis. But the Vaishnava philosopher, who is perfect in knowledge, knows that the body is made of the external energy and that the Supersoul, the Paramatma, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is sitting with the individual soul and is distinct from him. As Lord Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita 13.3, Chetragyam chapimam vidi sarva chetreshu bharata chetra chetragyayor jnanam tat yat tad jnanam matam mama. O Scion of Bharat, you should know, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies, and to understand this body and its owner is called knowledge. That is my opinion. The body is taken to be the field, and the individual soul is taken to be the worker in that field. Yet there is another, who is known as the Super Soul, who, along with the individual soul, simply witnesses. The individual soul works and enjoys the fruits of the body, whereas the Super Soul simply witnesses the activities of the individual soul, but does not enjoy the fruits of those activities. The Super Soul is present in every field of activity, whereas the individual soul is present in its one localized body. King Malayadvaj attained this perfection of knowledge and was able to distinguish between the soul and the super soul, and the soul and the material body. 41. In this way, King Malayadvaj attained perfect knowledge, because in his pure state he was directly instructed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By means of such enlightening transcendental knowledge, he could understand everything from all angles of vision. Purport. In this verse, the words Sakshad Bhagavatotena Garuna Harina are very significant. The Supreme Personality of Godhead speaks directly to the individual soul when the devotee has completely purified himself by rendering devotional service to the Lord. Lord Krishna confirms this also in Bhagavad Gita 10:10. Tesham satadiyuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayanti te. To those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. The Lord is the super soul seated in everyone's heart, and he acts as the Chaitya Guru, the spiritual master within. However, he gives direct instructions only to the advanced, pure devotees. In the beginning, when a devotee is serious and sincere, the Lord gives him directions from within to approach a bona fide spiritual master. When one is trained by the spiritual master according to the regulated principles of devotional service and is situated on the platform of spontaneous attachment for the Lord, Raga Bhakti, the Lord also gives instructions from within. Tesham satatidyuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam. Bhagavad Gita 10:10. Hey Sarva. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Okay? This distinct advantage is obtained by a liberated soul. Having attained this stage, King Malayadwaj was directly in touch with the Supreme Lord and was receiving instructions from him directly. Text 42. King Malayadwaj could thus observe that the Super Soul was sitting by his side, and that he, as the individual soul, was sitting by the side of the Super Soul. Since both were together, there was no need for separate interests. I'll repeat that, just in case someone was asleep and missed it. Since both were together, there was no need for separate interests. Thus he ceased from such activities. Purport. In the advanced stage of devotional service, the devotee does not see anything separate between his own interests and those of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Both interests become one, for the devotee does not act for a separate interest. Whatever he does in the interest of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. At that time he sees everything in the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the Supreme Personality of Godhead in everything. Having attained this stage of understanding, he sees no distinction between the spiritual and the material worlds. In perfect vision, the material world becomes the spiritual world due to its being the external energy of the Supreme Lord. For the perfect devotee, the energy and the energetic are non-different. Thus, the so-called material world becomes spiritual. Sarvam Kalvedam Brahma. Everything is intended for the services of the Supreme Lord. And the expert devotee can utilize any so-called material thing for the Lord's service. One cannot serve the Lord without being on the spiritual platform. Thus, if a so-called material thing is dovetailed in the service of the Lord, it is no longer to be considered material. Thus, the pure devotee, in his perfect vision, sees from all angles. So I want to treat you all to something. When Shukadeva Goswami finished reciting the Bhagavatam to Maharaj Parikshit, Uttara, the mother of Parikshit Maharaj, was there, but she wasn't close enough to hear So she approached Parikshit Maharaj. By this time, Shukadev just kind of, Shukadev was so detached. He just came, he gave the whole Bhagavatam, and that was it, and then he left. He didn't even stick around for the time when Parikshit was going to get bit by the snake bird and burned to death. And she came to him and she said, please, I know that you're going to leave soon, but I wasn't close enough to hear. Could you please tell me what Shukadev told you? So then Parikshit said, you're my mother. And most mothers would be besides themselves with, anxiety. Yes, reject. Thank you. So he said, I'm so touched that you are asking me, for the perfection of life, rather than being lamenting just because I'm your son and I'm going to leave pretty soon. So I'm bound, I'm obliged. So then he thought, 18,000 verses. I can leave at any second. So what he did was he essentialized the Bhagavatam, and it came out of his mouth as the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. And there's two sections. In the first section, Narada Muni goes from person to person to person, devotees, looking for the best devotee of Krishna. And ended up, anyway, that's the first half. The second half is Gopakumar. Gopakumar also got a special benediction from his spiritual master that he could, because he was a young boy, he was only 10 years old, and he was from Govardhan. He was a Govardhan Basi, a cowherd boy in Govardhan. And while they were playing with the cowherd boys, there was a great saint, which, by the way, ended up being Vishnu himself, who came there just to deliver him. And so he met this saint, and the other boys were kind of just playing around, but he was more serious, so he started to serve the saint and developed a relationship, and the saint blessed him and gave him the benediction that he would be able to, and he gave him mantra. It was the Gopal mantra, a version of the Gopal mantra, and he said, this mantra will take you wherever you want to go, and you'll learn everything. So he started a journey, and he went all different places in the earth, through the heavenly planets, to the abode of liberation, and when he got to the abode of liberation, he met Lord Shiva, and then he was told to go back to Vrindavan, and then he went from there to Vishnu Loka, and he met Vishnu. And then he wasn't quite satisfied because he was meant to be a cowherd boy in Goloka Vrindavan. I'm just giving you a nutshell. This is a real nutshell. It's actually a pretty big book like this. And Gopi Puranjana Prabhu translated it, and it's not the first translation in English of the verses. There's other translation in English, but it's such bad English that you can't understand it. But there's never been a translation of the purports, the commentary, Digdarshani commentary. So Gopi Puranjana was so expert that he did the first translation into English of the Digdarshani commentary of the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. And then he asked yours truly to be his editor. So I got the rare opportunity to edit this book. And I was in Govardhan all by myself, and there was no communications because phones didn't work, there was no internet. This is a long time ago. And I was there hearing these things and trying to make the English as nice as possible, and I was getting trained by guess who? Jayadvaita Maharaj. So he trained me how to edit on the job. And then at the end, we did a reading, and every time, my goal was to edit in such a way that we didn't have to do anything. But he was so expert, no matter how good I got, he just took it to another level, and another level, and another level. And I'm going to give you a sample. And this sample is when Gopakumar finally, after learning what Harinam Sankirtan is, Prem Sankirtan, Prem Nam, the Nam Sankirtan, chanting in love. And so he was told to go back from Vishnu Loka back to Vrindavan again, because one of the main purposes of the book was to describe how it is that Gokula Vrindavan in the earth is the gateway to go to Goloka Vrindavan. And when he got there, he found out that it looked the same as the Vrindavan in this earth, which we already just heard. No difference between the spiritual world and the material world. It's another sense. It's in another sense, but essentially it's the same. So then I'm going to read to you the description of how he came to Goloka Vrindavan. This is the next retreat. Better than Mauna. Okay. Where was this? 55? So when he was in Vrindavan, he was chanting in ecstatic love and meditating on Krishna's pastimes, because that's the goal of this whole process, to come to that point where you can chant with love and meditate on Krishna's pastimes. So finally Narada sent him back to Vrindavan on the earth, and he became so ecstatic that Krishna appeared to him. And he fell down on the ground, unconscious, tears flowing from his eyes. And then Krishna, he's so tricky, then he disappeared into the forest. He gave him just a glimpse, and then he went into the forest. And he went mad. And this is what you got to do to go back to Godhead. You got to fall head over heels, madly in love with Krishna. So, sorry, I'm looking for that place. I'm looking for just the right place. Yeah, I'm getting there. He had already been to the higher planets, he had been to the abode of liberation, he'd been to Vaikuntha. Yes. Then, seeing his lotus face, I quickly stood up, not knowing what I was doing. My heart filled with joy. My heart filling with joy, I tried to catch hold of his splendid yellow cloth. That king of charming heroes blew his flute in his own playful way and escaped behind me. Suddenly, he stepped into a grove, and alas, though I ran about looking, I couldn't find him. He had disappeared. Unable to see him, I fainted and fell into the swift current of the Yamuna. And as it forcibly carried me away, I seemed to regain normal awareness and looked around. I saw myself being transported to another place, along some wonderful path, by a vehicle flying faster than the mind and higher than one could imagine. Collecting my wits, I was amazed to see I was passing through Vaikuntha Loka and going beyond. I watched with great delight as I passed Ayodhya and other realms. I arrived at the shining world above all others, Sri Goloka, which I had long aspired to reach. Everything there appeared the same as in this divine Mathura Mandala of the material world. In that original land of Mathura, I visited Mathura city. I was surprised and happy to see that it resembled the Mathura here on earth. In that original Mathura, I heard that Kamsa had taken it upon himself to arrest his father and Krishna's parents, Devaki and Vasudeva, and was ruling the kingdom. This is a great mystery. This is Goloka. Commentary. Kamsa needed no introduction, especially to a person who hailed from Mathura city. The Brahmana must at least have read about him in the Puranas, because he's telling the story to a Brahmana from Mathura, and other scriptures. Later in this narration, we will discover how persons like wicked Kamsa, who in the material world had died long ago, could still be active in Sri Goloka. Out of fear of Kamsa, whose family and friends were enemies of the demigods, the Yadavas dared not enjoy themselves freely. Because of him, they constantly suffered all sorts of affliction. Some of the Yadavas escaped elsewhere, and others took shelter of him. I too was afraid of Kamsa, so as soon as I finished bathing at Vishrantighat, I hurriedly left Mathura and went to glorious Vrindavan. So he's learning now. He's come to Vrindavan from the material world, but now he's entering. It's not that he just, he's entering. He has to learn things. In that realm, beyond the reach of all the demigods, planetary rulers, and personal attendants of the Supreme Lord, I saw that life was going on just as here in this Aryavarta country, in the Bharatvarsha on earth. The sun was rising, and the other natural events were taking place every day in the sky, and on the land the people were speaking and behaving in the same way as here. I was stunned by astonishment, extreme astonishment, and immersed in an ocean of ecstatic rasa. After a few moments, I saw some men who might have been cowherds wandering in the forest with some ladies, advanced in years, and also wearing cowherd dress, who were picking flowers. The people there were different from anyone I had ever seen. Someone, it appeared, had stolen the wealth of their hearts and left them helplessly in love with him. Commentary. Since the beauty and good character of Goloka's people were not to be found anywhere else, Gopakumar could hardly think of an adequate metaphor by which these people could be described. They seemed distracted, as if someone had stolen their hearts. The actual cause of this strange behavior was that they suffered from divine madness. They seemed distraught because a thief had stolen the treasure of their hearts. Or at least that was how things appeared on the surface. Because Gopakumar had just been introduced to life in Goloka, he preferred to hold off on making a final judgment. 24. Simply by seeing them, I felt the same kind of loving affection. This is how you spread Krishna consciousness. Simply by seeing them, I felt the same kind of loving affection. Trying hard, I composed myself and respectfully asked them the following questions. O good people, you are served by a happiness so vast that the great sages can't obtain it even in dreams. You are reservoirs of the mercy of the Lord, the husband of the goddess of fortune, mercy for which his loving devotees always pray. Please, please look with kindness upon this most wretched person who has come to you for shelter. Tell me, who is the king of this region? Where is his residence? Which roads lead there? dear, dear most fortunate people, please be merciful to me, who am asking you with mournful cries. Please give me some answer, O faithful devotees, if even only by gesture. Commentary. Not receiving an answer, Gopakumar first guesses that perhaps these Golokavasis were nearly deaf. He therefore repeats his address more distinctly, saying loudly, Bo, Bo, dear people, dear people. He then realizes they are not deaf, but simply paying no attention to him. So he tries to impress on them the sincerity of his request. He praises them as Danya, most fortunate, and Suvrata, faithful followers of regulated principles. If these devotees are following a vow of silence, at least they can answer him by hand signals. 28. Oh, please hear the words of this tormented soul. Alas, you must be under the spell of that clever cheat. In this way I moved here and there, anxiously questioning each person I met. As I made my way forward, I came to the pasturing grounds of the cowherds. Looking around in all directions, I spotted in the distance a town adorned with the essence of all sweetness. On one side of that town, all about, I heard wonderful songs sung by cowherd women, and the charming sound of the churning of butter and the jingling of bangles. Trying to subdue my agitated joy, I walked forward and came across a seated elderly gentleman, sobbing profusely, incessantly chanting, Krishna, Krishna. With some skillful effort, I made him speak, and I heard him say in a choked voice that this town belonged to Nanda, the king of the cowherds, Sri Krishna's father. As soon as I heard those words, I fainted, overcome with delight. After a moment, that compassionate old man revived me, and I ran ahead and approached the gateway of the town and sat there in the gate. And there I saw, by the hundreds of thousands and tens of millions, all sorts of wonders, unseen, unheard of, unimaginable by anyone of this world. O best of Brahmanas, I couldn't discern whether the people there were all enjoying the highest bliss or suffering in the grip of terrible misery. I heard the gopis' songs coupled with their crying, but were they songs of the greatest contentment or the greatest sorrow? I couldn't tell. A person seeing that place might think he was in the material world, but by carefully reflecting on whatever he had ever seen before, he would understand that he was now somewhere above all material planets, all higher non-planetary regions, and all the transcendental realms of the spiritual world. Then an elderly lady came by. I bowed down to her and asked in a plaintive voice where Sri Nandanandana was playing today. The elder lady said, "This morning, that giver of life to us Brajvasis went into the dense forest to play with his cows and friends and his respected elder brother. Later, at dusk, he will return." Commentary. This old gopi anticipates that when Krishna returns home, samayasati, he will expertly fulfill the individual expectations of each Brajavasi. And if he doesn't come home on time, she further implies, we will all die of disappointment. All the Brajvasis are waiting on this path along the Yamuna, their eyes transfixed on the road. These trees stand with leaves erect, eagerly awaiting the chance to see him. Surely he will come along this path. Sri Gopakumar said, as if anointed by a downpour of the purest nectar, I gazed with one-pointed attention down the path the old lady had pointed out. The sheer force of my ecstasy had frozen my thighs. But with some effort I moved on, and I heard from afar a certain sound. Mixed with the mooing of cows, it was the supremely attractive murmur of Krishna's enchanting flute. That sound, sweet melodies of sportingly played notes, diverse with music embellishments, was like nothing ever heard in the material world. Its attractive force at once overwhelmed everyone in the cowherd village. By the power of that sound, sap flowed in a downpour from the long rows of trees. A flood of tears fell from the eyes of every embodied being in the village of the cowherds. A shower of milk rained from the breasts of all of Krishna's mothers, even the elderly, and the rapid currents of the Yamuna suddenly stood still. I didn't know whether that flute gave out poison or the nectar of immortality, whether its sound was harsh like thunder or soft like water, hotter than blazing fire or cooler than the moon. I couldn't tell. But that sound drove all the Brajbasis mad. All of them were utterly bewildered. Then I saw some women of Braj come out of their homes, bearing in their hands the things needed to greet Krishna with worship. Others who passed by held ornaments and offerings of food on their heads. Other ladies, ignoring everything around them, ran toward the mingled sounds of the mooing of the cows and the song of the flute. In the frenzy of love for Krishna, the ladies stumbled down the path. Some ladies ran with their ornaments in disarray. Some could hardly keep their belts and hair tied. Some stayed in their homes, stunned like trees, and others fell unconscious to the ground. Some of the women who had fainted, their faces wet with tears and saliva, were carried forward by their girlfriends. Other ladies, pained by the urges of their love for Krishna, went ahead, pressed on by their friends. Come, see him. The ladies, so diverse in complexion and adorned with diverse ornaments and dress, put to shame the good fortune of the goddess of fortune herself. Swiftly, the ladies ran to the bank of the Yamuna, absorbed in singing his names and pastimes. I too went forward, as if pulled by someone. Joining the throng of gopis rushing forward on all sides, I too began to run quickly. Then, from a distance, I saw him, his charming flute in hand. Running quickly, he emerged from among his friends and animals and approached me, saying in a sweet voice, "Look, Sri Dhamma, here is my dear friend Surupa, the sun who shines on the lotus of your family." Krishna was dressed for the forest. His garments, earrings, and peacock feathers, crown, all swayed to and fro. And so did his garland of kandamba flowers. His fragrance perfumed all directions, and his beautiful lotus face blossomed with a playful smile. His lotus eyes beamed with a merciful glance, and the varied assets of beauty decorated him in a singular way. The fingers of his lotus hand busily pushed back the locks of his hair, which flew about, adorned with the dust raised by the cows. His tender, divine lotus feet touched the surface of the earth just to grant her the gift of supreme splendor. Playfully dancing as they moved, they attracted everyone's heart with their great eagerness to walk quickly with large steps. The effulgence of his cloud-colored body, shining with the full sweetness of youth, lit up all corners of the sky. His beauty, which captured the hearts of the ever-dear devotees of Braja, was an ocean abounding with countless excellences. He leaped forward and came close to me, compelled by the affection of his helpless devotee. I fainted in love at seeing him. He caught hold of me by the neck, and suddenly he too fell to the ground. Commentary. Gopakumar was already aware, at least theoretically, that Krishna is very affectionate to his helpless devotees. But now he learned that Krishna had affection specifically for him. Merely seeing Krishna was enough to utterly enchant Gopakumar, but this new discovery pushed him toward the limit of ecstasy. A moment later, I reawoke and carefully freed my neck from his grasp. I stood up and saw him on the ground, in a faint, moistening the dust-covered path with his tears. Some gopis came and asked, "Look, who has come here? What has he done? He has put our life and soul into such a state. Alas, alas, just see, people of Braja, now we are all dead." This must be some servant of that great wizard Kamsa. Lamenting like this in many ways, the gopis cried loudly in distress as they surrounded Krishna. Then from behind Krishna, several groups of cowherds quickly approached. Seeing him in such a state, they cried with pitiful voices. From far away in the village, Nanda and the other elder cowherds heard this terrible sound of crying. So too did Yashoda, ever affectionate to her son, and so did the other elder ladies and maidservants. Together they all ran to that place, their feet stumbling on the path, bewildered. They too cried, "Alas, alas." Then the cows and bulls and calves came there, and the black deer and other animals. Seeing Krishna in that state, they wept in agony. The animals, all crying out in love, their faces drenched with floods of tears, approached Krishna one by one, and gently smelled and licked him again and again. Great numbers of birds flying overhead also told of their misery by making a tumultuous sound that sounded like people crying. And the immobile creatures, in great pain within, seemed suddenly to dry up. What more is there to say? All beings, moving and non-moving, were on the verge of death. As for me, I was drowning in a vast ocean of sorrow. Confused about what to do, severely tormented, I put Krishna's feet on my head and began profusely sobbing and lamenting. Then Lord Balabhadra, Krishna's older brother, quickly arrived from some distance away, full of fear. White-complexioned and arrayed in blue garments, he appeared charming, for he was the same age as Krishna and nicely dressed. Lord Balabhadra, then that most skillful of persons, cried for a moment, but then seemed to regain his composure and looked all around. With great care and attention, he made me hold his younger brother by the neck with my arms. He wiped Krishna's beautiful limbs clean with my hand and made me loudly call out to him with many plaintive cries. Then he made me lift Krishna up from the ground. Suddenly Krishna opened his eyes, sealed till then by a flood of tears. Seeing me, he joyfully embraced and kissed me. But then he looked around and became embarrassed. That best of the Lords took my hand in his own left lotus hand, and received me as a long-lost bosom friend. He asked me various questions. Then he greeted all the people of Braja and entered the best of cowherd villages with the gait of an elephant. Commentary. Krishna's closest friends are as dear to him as life itself. Holding Gopakumar's hand, Krishna welcomed him with such questions as, "Dear friend, are you healthy and happy?" That's what it's like to go back to the spiritual world. So this is what you have to go through here in the material world. You have to stop feeling bad about things and about others. You have to keep your mind going to Krishna, running to Krishna constantly. And when something happens that's untoward or make you suffer, run to Krishna in your mind. Grab your bead bag, open the books, jump into a kirtan. Do anything to just run to Krishna. Whenever anything happens that you think is like unbearable, and Krishna from in your heart, he will straighten it all out and teach you that all the sufferings in the material world, they're just ephemeral. As soon as they came, they will go. Okay, I'll stop here. And I know I just read a little of Bhagavatam today, but I thought it was kind of relevant what it was saying in the purports. Here we go. Our doctor is going to give us a prescription.
Hare Krishna. I've come here to get a prescription from you. It was a very wonderful narration, like very soothing to ears and soul. I wanted to ask that since the Brajavasis, they always have an intimate relationship with Krishna which we cannot imitate, what are the ways and means by which we can improve our bhajan or sadhana, so we get a little tinge of taste of what they have?
Well, that's described in a nutshell, succinctly, in 2 books. I mean, we have the Bhagavatam, and everything's there in the Bhagavatam. It's a huge ocean. Everything is there in the Bhagavatam. But Rupa Goswami systematized it or put it into a very compact form in the Upadeshamrita. So there you have everything. What you have to do, how you have to be. First you have to control your senses. Vacho, Vana, Mana, Jiva, Vega, Mudra, Vega. You have to tolerate the urges of the senses, and what that means is to follow the regulated principle strictly. And above that, then you have to, do what is right and not do what is wrong. You have to accept things that are favorable and reject things that are unfavorable. Anyway, then you have to do the things that are favorable. And there's 2 verses. There's 6 of one and 6 of the other. And then Shikshashtaka. Shikshashtaka tells everything. It's so simple. First, chant Hare Krishna, without hesitation, without reticence, just chant. Hear the sound and glorify the holy name. And then admit that even though Krishna has millions of names, and even though all potencies are there in the names, in other words, the names are not different than Krishna, and even though there's no hard and fast rules for chanting them, still I got no taste. So then, Chinadapi Sunichana, third verse, then you have to learn to be more tolerant than a tree. And that's what material misery is about. It's Krishna's mercy to teach us how to be more tolerant than a tree. Not to complain, not to pipe off about this one or that one, or this or that, or whatever. Then we have to be more resilient than blade of grass, humble. The grass, you step on the grass, it goes down. You put your foot off the grass, it comes back up. And then you have to, amanina manadena, you have to give respect to everyone, even if they mistreat you. Then you can chant all the time. Then you can nadanam najananda sundari, kavitam vajagadeshwari. Then you can stop from wanting everything and anything and everything. Then you can pray for the right thing. Ayinanda tanuja kinkano, tita mam pushame bhavambado, kripaya tavapada panjaka, stita duli sadujam. I've fallen into this material world. Please, O Lord, pick me up and fix me as one of the atoms of your lotus feet. In other words, be the humble servant. Insignificant. We talked a little bit about this before, Dainya, yesterday. That's it. And chant Hare Krishna in that mood. And worship the devotees. Because the devotees are so dear to Krishna. We just heard how dear one devotee is to Krishna. That's it. Huh?
That's it.
Yeah. Hey, sorry. Pass this over. Thanks.
What does it mean to serve the holy name?
It means to chant the name for the Lord's pleasure, for no other reason, to please Krishna and to be with Krishna, and to find out what your service is. Each one of us has a service in the spiritual world. We have a form, we have a relationship, and we have a service. And now we don't know what it is. So to serve the holy name means to chant in order to purify our hearts. This is the beginning. And then to give that to others, to absorb ourselves in the mood of helping others. That takes the emphasis off ourselves and puts it onto helping others, to make others happy. To serving. We're not chanting to help ourselves, to make ourselves. We're chanting to serve Krishna, to please Krishna, and to please others. That's Sankirtan. That's Nam Sankirtan. That was what Narada Muni taught Gopakumar. You have to chant. First of all, we chant according to rules and regulations, and we follow the rules and regulations, and we do the details of deity worship, and we hear, the Bhagavad Gita and try to learn how to act, how not to, and all those things. But eventually, we have to serve. We have to chant with pure love. That means your chanting doesn't stop. It goes on constantly.
In the mind, or that it stay on
All the time, inside, outside, inside, in between. and then you'll become jolly. Practice, try. It's great. I've been doing it for 20 years. I've been practicing chant when the music stops. You know how it used to be when we were hippies. I used to think, yeah, but what happens when the music stops? Because there's always some kind of music going on, constantly blaring, constantly. When music stops, it was like everybody came down, and you start the music up again.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I have a question about this, just the feeling of separation, and what is so actually relishable about it to the extent that even in the spiritual world, the gopis are experiencing this separation, even just when Krishna just goes out to play for the day.
Oh, that's just the beginning. That's just the beginning. When you feel separation from another person, when you're in love with another person, and you feel separation from them when they go away, then that feeling is more intense than when you're with them. So feeling of separation is actually the highest form of love. So, but the gopis and the queens, they feel separation so intensely that they feel the anticipation of the separation. Even when they're in the presence of Krishna. And when that reaches the perfectional stage, Krishna disappears, even though he's standing right in front of them. And then they just faint. They go into a swoon, and that's it. So we practice by chanting here in this miserable world, with all these miserable things we have to go through. We practice chanting here with this feeling of separation. When will I be able to serve? When will I be able to serve? When will I be able to serve? That's how to serve the holy name. And do that, and keep hearing the Bhagavatam all the way through. Now we're in this heavy section where we're getting this, bare bones, description of what material attachment is and how it works and what it does to us. And it'll keep going, and it'll take us here. I just read just a little bit of, what it's like in the 10th canto. Nice, huh? So hear this. Keep hearing, and keep hearing, and keep chanting, and keep hearing, and keep serving, and learning how to be with the devotees with affection rather than all the other things we sometimes go through. All the doubts and, anger and this and that and the other thing. It's all illusion. It's all Maya. Somebody from... Hey, Rati. Welcome back. Well, should I welcome you back? He just came back from Mayapur, and she was pretty happy in Mayapur. Maybe she's feeling some separation from Mayapur.
Dear Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Thank you very much for the wonderful reading of tonight, and thank the Dr. Anandishwara for his wonderful question on how to improve our bhajan. You spoke about the importance of being humble and tolerant. I understand your explanation to a certain extent. Being raised in the West, I have a question. Is there any situation, for example, in a workplace or in a relationship, in which it can be fitting or right to, quote, unquote, stand up for oneself, to state our limits to another person, or should we simply tell ourselves, be tolerant, and, for example, even tolerate abuse?
The rule, the guideline, is to accept those things that are favorable to our devotional life and to reject those things that are unfavorable. So it's not an absolute answer. It's different for everyone because everyone's on a different place along the path. If you're extremely advanced, then it doesn't make any difference to you whether people are, rolling over you or not. You just take everything as Krishna's mercy, and you just go to Krishna, and everything that happens to you, it makes you deeper and deeper in love with Krishna. But if you aren't on that place, and if some abuse is going to cause you to forget Krishna, or go into another state of material suffering and lamentation, and cause you to fall down, then of course you have to stand up. Therefore, in the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam, it says that a woman is not required or not advised to follow a fallen husband. So there's all these directions. We've heard a lot of them lately in this section of the Bhagavatam. How it's a woman's duty, dharma, is to be submissive and follow and faithful and chaste to the husband. But if the husband's a rascal and is abusive and is fallen, then the woman is recommended to leave. That's out of the Bhagavatam.
She thanks you.
Well, you're welcome. Don't think anything of it. It's 4:46, 5:45. I'm going to stop now. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Narada Muni ki jai. Gopakumar ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow at 6:30. Same time. Same place. Same station. Hare Krishna.